I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. So, I started paying closer attention. Every little detail, every moment of absence, every time she looked at her phone and smiled, things I had ignored before now screamed at me. Emily used to be an open book. She would talk about her day, share her thoughts, and complain about work. But now, she barely mentioned anything. If I asked how her day went, she'd give me short, vague answers. Just the usual, she'd say with a forced smile before turning away. One night, as she slept beside me, I reached for her phone. My hands trembled. I wasn't the kind of man who invaded privacy, but the unease in my gut left me no choice. Locked. She never used to lock her phone. That alone felt like confirmation. My breathing grew heavy as I placed it back and stared at the ceiling. Thoughts swirled, each one darker than the last. The next day, she left early for work. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, my mind racing. Then I grabbed my jacket and keys. I needed to see it for myself. I drove to her office, parking a few buildings away. Sitting there, I felt ridiculous. What was I hoping to find? But deep down, I knew. Hours passed. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the city in fading light. Then I saw her. Emily walked out, her head tilted back in laughter. Beside her, a man. Tall, well-dressed, confident. They stood close, too close. His hand brushed against hers before settling on the small of her back. My stomach twisted. They headed toward a restaurant nearby. I followed at a distance, my pulse hammering. Inside, they sat in a dimly lit corner, their faces close together. Emily looked at him in a way she hadn't looked at me in months. Pain clenched my chest. I wanted to storm and demand answers, make a scene. But I forced myself to stay put. I needed proof, undeniable evidence. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures. Each click felt like a knife, slicing through my heart. They stayed for nearly 2 hours. When they left, they didn't part ways. Instead, they walked toward a nearby hotel. My vision blurred with rage as I watched them disappear inside. Emily had lied. Again and again. And now I had the truth. I drove home in silence, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. My mind reeled, replaying everything I had just witnessed. Emily, my wife, the woman I had given my heart to, was with another man. Seeing her slip inside that hotel with him shattered something inside me. I parked in the driveway, but didn't move. My body felt like dead weight. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows across the yard. The home we built together now felt foreign, like a place I no longer belonged. Minutes passed, then an hour. I just sat there, staring into the darkness, waiting for my emotions to settle. But they didn't. Anger boiled beneath my skin, battling the heartbreak clawing at my chest. Eventually, I forced myself inside. The house was quiet, empty. I poured a drink, but it tasted bitter. Nothing felt right anymore. I needed answers. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. I grabbed my phone and dialed Jason. Hey man, he answered, his voice groggy. Sorry to call so late, I said, my throat dry. I need another favor. Jason sighed, but I knew he'd help. What is it? I need to know everything about Daniel. Silence. Then a quiet curse. You're sure? I swallowed hard. I saw them. I need to know who he is, what he does, and if he has any weaknesses. Jason exhaled. All right. Give me a few hours. I hung up, staring at the phone. Hours? Every second felt like an eternity. Emily walked through the door just after midnight. I watched as she kicked off her heels, moving through the house like nothing was wrong. She turned, startled to see me sitting in the dimly lit living room. You're still up? I studied her, searching for any sign of guilt, any flicker of remorse. There was none. Couldn't sleep, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. She smiled, moving closer. Long day. I resisted the urge to recoil when she placed a hand on my shoulder. That same hand had been on him hours ago. You could say that, I muttered. She yawned. I'm exhausted. We had back-to-back meetings. I might call in sick tomorrow. Lie. I clenched my jaw, but nodded. You should get some rest. She leaned down, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead before heading upstairs. My skin burned where her lips had touched. As soon as she disappeared, my phone buzzed. Jason. Got something for you, he said. You're gonna want to hear this. I stepped outside, needing fresh air. Tell me. Daniel Carter. 42. Married. His wife's name is Rebecca. I stiffened. Married? Oh yeah, Jason continued. And get this, Rebecca owns half of his company. If she finds out about the affair, he's screwed. I sucked in a breath. That changed everything. Where can I find her? I asked, already forming a plan. Jason hesitated. You sure about this? She deserves to know, I said, my voice firm. A pause. Then he sighed. I'll text you her address. My phone dinged a moment later. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Rebecca Carter. The one person who had just as much to lose as I did. And together, we were about to burn their world to the ground. The next morning, I woke up with a singular purpose, confronting Rebecca Carter. I had spent the night replaying every lie Emily had told me, every stolen glance she had shared with Daniel, every touch they thought no one had noticed. My fury had simmered into something cold and calculated. If Emily thought she could betray me and walk away unscathed, she was sorely mistaken. I left before she even woke up. No goodbye. No explanation. She didn't deserve one. The address Jason sent led me to an upscale neighborhood, the kind where every house had towering iron gates and pristine landscaping. I pulled up to a sleek, modern home with floor-to-ceiling windows and rang the doorbell. Seconds later, the door swung open. Rebecca Carter stood there, dressed in a sharp black blouse and fitted slacks, her dark hair styled to perfection. Her piercing green eyes studied me with suspicion. Can I help you? She asked, her voice cool but controlled. I took a steadying breath. I think you'd want to know what your husband has been doing behind your back. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of something in her eyes. Doubt. Fear. Curiosity. Go on, she said, crossing her arms. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos I had taken of Emily and Daniel at the restaurant, and held the screen up. Your husband and my wife, I said flatly. Rebecca's gaze hardened as she took the phone from my hand, scrolling through the evidence. Her fingers tightened around the device, knuckles turning white. How long? She asked, her voice eerily calm. I don't know exactly, I admitted. But long enough to lie about it. Long enough to book a hotel room together last night. She inhaled sharply, but still, she didn't break. Instead, she turned and walked into the house, leaving the door open behind her, a silent invitation. I stepped inside, taking in the pristine space. Everything was perfect, from the marble floors to the designer furniture. And yet, there was an emptiness to it. A coldness. Rebecca poured herself a drink. I had my suspicions, she admitted, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. Daniel has been distracted. Less careful. She exhaled sharply. I knew he was hiding something, but I never imagined this. I sat across from her, my own anger reflected in her steely gaze. I'm not here for sympathy, I told her. I came because I figured you'd want to do something about it. She smirked, but there was no humor in it. Oh, you have no idea. I leaned forward. What's your plan? She took a sip of her drink, then set the glass down with a decisive thud. Daniel and I built this company together. He thinks he's untouchable, but what he doesn't realize is that I hold the keys to everything. If I decide to take him down, he'll lose everything. I raised an eyebrow. And you're willing to do that? Rebecca smiled coldly. Oh, I'm more than willing. But I don't want to do it quietly. I want it to be loud. Public. I want them both to feel it. I nodded slowly, feeling the first spark of satisfaction since discovering the affair. Then let's make sure they never forget it. Rebecca's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Let's wreck them. We spent the next hour strategizing. Rebecca had access to Daniel's business accounts, his emails, and, most importantly, his schedule. He's got a big meeting this afternoon, she said, tapping on her tablet. A presentation with potential investors. If something disruptive were to happen, It could ruin him. A slow smile spread across my face. I think I know exactly how to make that happen. She tilted her head. Oh. I pulled up my email and attached the photos of Emily and Daniel. Let's send these to everyone on his board. Investors. Employees. Make sure there's no way he can talk his way out of it. Rebecca chuckled darkly. You're ruthless. I shrugged. He deserves it. She tapped a few buttons on her screen. Consider it done. As the email sent, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt in control. Now, all we had to do was wait for the explosion. I sat in my car outside Daniel's office, my heart pounding in anticipation. The email had been sent, the trap set. Now, it was only a matter of time before the firestorm erupted. Beside me, Rebecca scrolled through her phone, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips. Got confirmation, she murmured. The email's been opened by over 50 people already. Board members, executives, even some clients. I exhaled slowly. Then we're about to see the fallout firsthand. At that moment, the glass doors of the towering office building flew open. Daniel stumbled out, his usually pristine suit wrinkled, his face flushed with shock and fury. Employees gathered near the entrance, murmuring among themselves, their eyes glued to him like he was a spectacle. Seconds later, Emily appeared, her expression a mask of panic. She grabbed Daniel's arm, trying to usher him toward the parking lot, but he shook her off. Don't touch me, he snapped, his voice carrying through the crisp morning air. Rebecca arched an eyebrow. Oh, this is getting good. I leaned forward, watching as another figure stormed outside, Daniel's business partner, Greg. His face was red with barely contained rage. You selfish, lying son of a... Greg's voice cut through the air as he advanced on Daniel. Do you have any idea what you've done? Investors are pulling out left and right. The company is in free fall because you couldn't keep it in your damn pants. Daniel stammered, raising his hands defensively. Greg, listen. No, you listen. Greg thundered. Rebecca owns half this company, and she's already started freezing your assets. You're done, Daniel. Rebecca let out a delighted hum. Music to my ears. Emily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Let's just leave, okay? We can figure this out. Daniel rounded on her, his face twisted in anger. You think this is just about me? You're in those pictures too. Do you have any idea what people are saying? You're a homewrecker, Emily. You've ruined me. Emily paled. Daniel, please. He sneered, stepping away from her. We're finished. Rebecca chuckled under her breath. Didn't take long for him to throw her under the bus. I watched as Emily's world crumbled before her eyes. She had risked everything, her marriage, her reputation for this man. And now, in front of dozens of colleagues, he discarded her like trash. She turned wildly, her gaze scanning the crowd. Then her eyes landed on me. Her breath hitched. A silent plea flickered in her gaze. Help me. But I felt nothing for her now. No love, no pity, not even anger anymore. Just cold detachment. I stepped out of the car, making my presence known. Emily's face crumpled. Please, let's talk, she begged, rushing toward me. I held up a hand. There's nothing left to say. Tears welled in her eyes. I made a mistake. A mistake. I laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. No, Emily. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is saying something you regret in an argument. What you did, that was a choice. Her lip trembled. I love you. I shook my head, staring at the woman I once cherished. No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Goodbye, Emily. As I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The pain of betrayal was still there, but the burden of loving someone who never deserved me had finally lifted. Rebecca joined me by the car, her eyes sparkling with satisfaction. That went even better than I imagined. I glanced at her, a smirk tugging at my lips. So, what now? She shrugged. Now? I rebuild. Without him. And you? I exhaled, feeling the first taste of freedom. I start over. She studied me for a moment before a slow smile spread across her lips. Well, if you ever need help with that, give me a call. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Maybe betrayal wasn't the end of my story. Maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something new.